Lecture 8-1, Volcanic Activity. Now, beautiful picture of an erupting volcano here. Volcanoes have the ability to drastically change the landscape. They transfer a tremendous amount of energy. In this volcanic eruption here, you can see it's a very explosive eruption, sending materials up very, very high into the sky, sending stuff also down the hill, and containing a lot of ash. I mean, the ash is very, very, very fine particles. They are like little razor blades. If you breathe this in, it's going to really hurt. You don't see a whole lot of lava in here, but there's suspected lava flows along this side here. So the lava is flowing down, ash is being ejected out. This is a very explosive eruption, drastically changing the landscape. We can look all throughout history and see how volcanoes have impacted humans. I mean, Mount St. Helens erupted in the early 80s, and it did end up killing some people. You saw a whole mountainside change. You saw the state park or the national park around it was devastated because almost all the trees within like a half mile or so were flattened. We can go to the Pele, and we can see. Pompeii. And we can see that there's a whole town covered in ash. So volcanoes can be very deadly. They also can be very interesting to study because the way the landscape changes so drastically. In Hawaii, you would not see a volcano that erupts this explosively. You would see very quiet eruptions, a lot of lava flows, but you're not going to see this type of explosion. Now, a volcano is defined as just any weak spot in the crust where magma comes to the surface. So weak spot in the crust where magma comes to the surface. They can form at plate boundaries, and a lot of them do, but we also get a group that form at hotspots. And hotspots is just a general term for a weakness in the crust away from a plate boundary. Yellowstone National Park and Hawaii are the two most common hotspots that we'll talk about. So a hotspot area of material from deep within the mantle rises and then melts forming magma and erupts through reaching the surface. Again, Hawaii and Yellowstone will be two of these hotspots. Now, volcanoes are made of what they expel. I mean, most volcanoes you see will be made of layers of lava and ash, or just lava, or it'll be made of bigger pieces too. It all depends on the type of eruption. What type of materials get ejected up? Well, they come back down, and they help form this. And so the volcano is made of layers of lava and the other materials that it ejects. It builds up over time. Now, this could take a long time, or it could take a little time. There's a volcano in South America that actually went from a farm field to a full-fledged volcano. I mean, less than a year, all of a sudden you had this huge volcano, whereas before there was a flat farm field. So these can change very drastically. They can also take a little time, and even some that explode explosively can destroy parts of their own structure, and you can see that the design of the volcano changes over time. So volcanoes are made up as lava comes up to the surface. They're going to be made of layers of lava. There's also going to be made of anything else that they send out. The crater at the top is just where the main pathway out for the lava. The main vent is a path from the magma chamber, which is where the magma is stored underground. Side vents are just where there are weak spots in the volcano where lava can also come out. Now, a hotspot is formed over a period of time, and actually a hotspot volcano, you can see multiple volcanoes being formed from one hotspot. What happens is we get this weak spot in a crust. So we get this little weak spot here. Magma comes up, forming our volcano. But since we know the plates move, it can form one volcano, and then form another, and then form another, constantly forming new ones over time until the hotspot is done. So you can see here, this volcano on the left is the oldest one. It was the first one to form. The one on the right here is youngest. Think about Hawaii. The big island of Hawaii is the youngest island there because it's the one where it's currently over the hotspot. The other islands were formed previously. There are still active volcanoes in some of the other islands, but the main hotspot is located under the big island of Hawaii. Yellowstone National Park is a hotspot also. You can see that where the hotspot was 13.8 million years ago, and then it's been moving. The hotspot seems to be moving, but we know it's because the North American plate is actually moving that way, so the hotspot appears to move. Current location of Yellowstone and its caldera, which is the remnant of the volcano, is where Yellowstone National Park is. It used to be located in the southwest corner of Idaho, and then, of course, as North American plate's been moving, it moves with it. This, you can see in the picture here, you can see where the past eruptions have taken place from this, what we call a supervolcano. It's called a supervolcano because it has a very large magma chamber deep underground, and occasionally when its conditions are right, it'll explode outwards. It's a very violent explosion. Ash covered parts of Iowa the last time this erupted, and you can see the last three numbers here. The last ones occurred 2 million years ago, 1.3 million years ago, 0.6 million years ago. If you follow that progression, you see that pretty much we are due. We are kind of in that time period where enough time has passed that it could be likely that it could erupt again. This would totally devastate most of the western half of North America. Here's the Yellowstone caldera again. We have a very large magma chamber deep underground, and it builds up pressure into another magma chamber kind of closer to the surface. You can see this caldera here. This is where it's erupted before, and you can see that it's kind of caved in on itself after a last eruption. Because this magma is so close to the surface, we get that geothermal activity. You see geysers forming in the Yellowstone National Park. You'll have hot springs located there. You'll have great reservoirs of underground heat. And so it's this magma close to the surface that creates things like Old Faithful, the very famous geyser at Yellowstone National Park, which has a very set period of time between eruptions. But the Yellowstone caldera, if this were to erupt, I mean, you would see just massive explosion outwards, and it would be one of the most violent volcanic eruptions of all time every time that this erupts. So again, typical volcano, you're going to have a magma chamber deep underground. The magma finds its way to the surface, and then it helps form the volcano over time. And most volcanoes are formed from layers of lava and whatever else they eject. There are a lot of different types of hazards associated with a volcanic eruption. It's not just the lava itself. I mean, we have a tremendous amount of energy that gets released because of the magma stored deep underground. And so volcanoes, they're very different from one volcano to another. We may be able to classify them in 3 or 4 different groups, but each volcano is unique depending on the type of magma present, the amount of magma present, the types of gases present in the magma, and how close the magma is to the surface. I mean, all this plays a big role in what type of volcano forms and how explosive the volcano will be. Now, most volcanoes are found along plate boundaries. You can see that this area here is the Pacific Ring of Fire along the Pacific plate boundaries. These were most of the known active volcanoes in the world are. You see some over here in Africa. That's the Great African Rift. That's actually where we have the plate boundaries are being separated at that point. You see that we do have some in the Mediterranean area, and again, caused by plate boundaries. You have some along the Mid-Atlantic Ridge. Of course, those are not as explosive and violent eruptions that you see. We're not thinking about the giant mountainous volcanoes. We're thinking more about the weak spots because the crust is being separated at that point. Then, of course, you see the hotspot areas of Hawaii, and here's Yellowstone up here. There are other hotspot volcanoes located out there, but for us, the two main ones we'll talk about are these two, just because one is such an easy one to study, and the other one is because it's so explosive it could affect us in the future. Looking at this map, each little triangle is an active volcano. You see Alaska, a place you think of as being very cold, but it has a tremendous amount of volcanoes located in its borders. And a lot of these volcanoes are ones that we can easily study because there's not a lot of people nearby, so we can get our sensors, we can get webcams placed nearby and record all this and not have to worry too much about safety of other people because no one's living near these.